Hey, it's Tim here. In today's video, it's a completely different type of content. I've been approached by quite a few data analysts saying, hey, Tim, why do you not make more content about how to become a data analyst? Why do you not talk more about your career and everything else? And the main reason is because it's actually quite hard to do that. And I think a lot of journeys are also quite unique. And unless you talk to a lot of people, you won't actually understand the variance. But on YouTube, there has been this surge in what I'd call influencer data analysts who are essentially talking about their careers and their journeys and showcasing how they've got to where they are. Stefanovic is one of those people who's actually created a pretty big following and I think some really good videos around how to become a data analyst. I'd highly recommend actually you subscribe to his channel because he talks very openly and honestly about his experience. And that's actually very valuable because it's only by listening to people's experiences will you learn how you can improve and get better. That's also the point behind channels like mine. But what I want to do is react to a video that he made about the fastest way to become a data analyst and actually get a job. This is the most pertinent one because that's what pretty much everyone reaches out for. And it's had 1.5 million views, which is an incredible achievement in itself. To get to that kind of milestone on YouTube takes an incredible amount of work. You have no idea. So I want to watch this video and hopefully give you my reactions to it so you can hopefully learn a bit about what I think of this, but also maybe also challenge some of the perceptions that you might be picking up incorrectly from this video. As ever, let's get stuck in. Okay, so let's get started.
From the day I started messing around with some data in Excel, it took me about 3 years to land a data analyst job at Heineken, and another 2 years to land a job as a freelance data analyst at a big bank in Europe, and another 2 years to quit that job and travel the world full-time, but more on that later. Okay.
So that's pretty interesting that that's how he starts out. I think he starts out with I think he starts out with an unrealistic vision. You see, to do the kind of transition he's doing, I think you have to be exceptionally skilled. And I think you also have to be incredibly lucky with not just the economy, the market, but also the opportunities that land at your feet. You've almost got to learn a skill, progress to the next thing almost immediately, learn the next skill. And as you're sort of perfecting that and refining that, by the time you get to sort of, the ceiling and that, another opportunity comes up and then it perfectly lands on your plate and then you take it and you get it and you go on. For many analysts, that's not the normal route. And so I think this is an inspirational message and I think you should hear it as exactly that. But it can also be a little bit demoralizing if that's not the journey you've been on. So I always like to just preface these things. I mean, the title of the video is The Fastest Way to Become a Data Analyst and Actually Get a Job. And it's his method, it's his approach to this. So just always be careful with sort of these timelines that people give you. And of course, YouTube is designed to kind of pull you in. So he's got to lead with something innovative. He wants to inspire you. So that makes total sense. So let's carry on.
You become a data analyst way faster, 100%. I've wasted too many hours watching YouTube tutorials and I've spent money on Udemy courses that didn't add any value. So I often ask myself.
That is absolutely true. The problem with Udemy is that they take your money and you often think that once you've purchased the course, you have access to this knowledge. Very few people actually finish the Udemy courses and good pace and then apply those skills to real work to then actually capitalize on the value that was held inside of that course. So it is totally normal for lots of people to be buying courses and not seeing the end result. What you have to be doing is be incredibly motivated, incredibly driven, and make sure you push through. It's as simple as that.
If I could start over with data analysis, knowing what I know today, how would I go about it? And that's exactly what this video is about.
Right.
I remove all the fluff and give you the fastest path to go from zero to a full-time data analyst.
Okay.
And throughout this video, I will share the 3 major mistakes almost every data analyst makes. So stay tuned for those. The first thing every beginner data analyst needs to pick is a tool or programming language for data analysis. I personally started off with Excel. Is that the best tool there is for data analysis? No. If I could go back in time, would I have started with something else? Also no, because apparently getting good at Excel was enough for my first data analysis job.
And I hate to say it, I'm here as Tableau Tim. He's absolutely correct here. To get your first data analyst job, most people think you have to go learn Tableau, go learn Power BI because those are the jobs that are in demand. But it's also just as effective to learn something like Excel. Go somewhere where they only have Excel. show your value there, then be the one to introduce them to new and better tools. That's also just as an effective way. And you might find that something like Excel has a much bigger sort of library of resources you can pick up. It's pretty much almost accessible everywhere. And a lot of the skills you learn working with Excels are transferable. Like a lot of the formulas, a lot of the techniques, you can then go and apply those in other technologies. It's all analytics at the end of the day. So it's not unique necessarily to Excel or other tools. So it's actually a really good way to start. The other reason I think Excel is actually super important is because a lot of organizations still use Excel alongside other platforms. And so what you'll find is you'll go in as a data analyst and you'll have to connect to Excel, open an Excel, decipher what's in the Excel and understand how it works. If you have the ability to open an Excel file and understand everything going on in there without having to go back to people and ask for help, you have a superpower that you just don't appreciate. So as annoying as it pains me to say, knowing your Excel skills is super important. And I think if you're going to start somewhere, start with what you have. And nearly everyone, I can't think of anyone who doesn't have Excel. If you don't have Excel, you probably have access to Google Sheets for free. Just open up a Google account, go and learn the exact same skill sets there, build something, script something in Google Sheets, and then take that knowledge into Excel. Almost all the features again are, pretty much one-to-one. So don't sit there and sort of come up with excuses about what you don't have access to or things are expensive. Just start with what you have. And as long as you make that journey and you start showcasing what you're building somewhere, it's a pretty good way to get involved. All right, let's carry on.
Job. And I personally recommend every single data analyst to start off with Excel. It's easy to learn, used in almost every company, and it has a wide range of applications for data analysis. But this is also its pitfall. Although you can do a lot of different things in Excel, it's not designed specifically for data analysis, meaning it has its limitations. You want to work with a very large data set? Well, good luck not punching through your computer screen after Excel crashes for the 27th time. Excel is perfect for starting out, but once you've mastered Excel, it's time to move on to the more serious tools. And the most logical tool to learn next is SQL. Next to Excel, it is apparently the second most requested skill in data analyst job openings.
Now, just because it's the second most requested skill, to me doesn't mean it's what you should go to next. And I think it actually really depends what you're trying to do in the context you're going into. The great thing about SQL is it's a generic skill. You'll always have it on your CV. People will always value it and it's going to be fantastic. But if you're starting from zero, going from something like Excel to SQL almost feels like a step backwards because you're going from what is a semi-visual tool that allows you to do some basic charts to almost what is not a programming language, but you're working in SQL. You're not necessarily going to be, creating things that inspire you. You're just going to be looking at SQL statements left, right, and center, kind of learning all this terminology. And I almost think that sometimes it's also important to start to build something, to show yourself some sort of reward for the skills you're having. And if you're going from Excel to SQL, I kind of think you're doing it backwards. So I'd actually recommend go pick up a data visualization tool, whether it's something like D3, Tableau, Power BI, Python, whatever it is. Just go pick up something visual and start applying the things you've learned in Excel to those tools and start building things. Because it's only when you start building things, you start to realize what problems you have in your data. And when you start to realize what those problems are, then guess what? SQL starts to make a ton more sense because you're discovering problems, you're understanding how you need to shape your data because you're literally looking and visualizing your data. And then when you come to learn SQL, you're doing it with a purpose because you're trying to recreate solutions to problems you've already come across. Whereas if you go and learn SQL, having just worked in Excel, whilst Excel might have given you some of those challenges, it won't give you anywhere near as enough challenges as using something visual where you want to maybe build a certain chart type and the data's in the wrong format. So I don't know what he's going to say next, but that to me would be sort of where I slightly disagree with this. But let's carry on and see what else he says.
Huge thanks to Luke Barrouz for actually scraping a lot of LinkedIn job openings.
I'll stop here and say Luke is fantastic. Go follow his channel. I'll put a link in the description. Luke Barrouz has probably some of the most neutral data analyst content on YouTube. And he's done a really sort of good analysis of roles in the industry, but also he's also looked at a lot of certifications and what's actually useful for data analysts. I think his video on the Google data analyst certification is probably one of the best ones out there. And yeah, generally his content is also funny and it's interesting, and he's just got a good vibe. Go follow the channel and check it out.
To come up with these facts. You're a legend, man. Thank you.
What up, done nerds?
And the reason SQL is so in demand is because it doesn't have the same limitations as Excel. Why is my accent suddenly changing to southern? I don't know what. With SQL, you can.
I can share some. Like that happens when you're recording videos. I think Stefanovic is using a teleprompter here, and when you get sort of focused into a teleprompter, your voice can start to do, you just stop paying attention to your voice because you're trying to pay attention to the pacing and the reading. So yeah, that's totally normal.
You can extract, transform, and load very large data sets. But the best thing about it is that SQL has its own very easy to use programming language. It's a great tool to add to your skill set as a data analyst, while also being a great stepping stone to some more serious programming.
Yep.
But before we get to that, every data analyst needs a visualization tool. There are dozens of
100%.
BI tools out there. But having worked for multiple companies and projects, and having looked at probably hundreds of data analyst job openings, I've come to realize that the majority of companies are looking for people with experience with Tableau, Power BI, and ClickView. Here's the
And that if I just go back, can I get that freeze frame there? No. Let's just see if I can time it better.
Companies are looking for people with experience with Tableau, Power BI, and
ClickView. All right, let's stop there. So, when was this video made? 6 months ago. There are more tools than these three, and I think he's absolutely right. The most roles you'll see do ask for Tableau, Power BI, and ClickView. You obviously, as Tableau, I'm going to say learn Tableau. That's obvious, right? But let me also be very honest with you. Whichever one you pick first, great, perfect. But if you're trying to be a data analyst, you're trying to get into a role, just know that it won't be the only tool you'll need to learn, right? So unless you're sensational at Tableau and you kind of give yourself a runway of 3 years in an organization in a setting that only uses Tableau, you're in those situations, you're pretty lucky. But if you want to be flexible, if you want to be sort of as applicable to as many people, then you're going to need to learn, I think, 2 at the very least. Now, you could go with Tableau and Power BI, you could go with Power BI and ClickView, whatever combinations you want. But I also recommend actually doing something a little bit rogue, which is choosing one of these tools alongside a tool that's not here. Because you see, some organizations use tools you've never heard of. And in order to appreciate those tools, I think it's really good to sort of diversify what you're learning. And these 3 tools kind of sit in the same space, business intelligence tools made for businesses with visual interfaces. They each have their strengths and weaknesses. If you're working with Power BI's data modeling capabilities are a little bit more advanced than Tableau. If you're working with Tableau's data visualization and flexibility techniques are a little bit more advanced than some of these other 2. But in essence, all these tools are converging to sort of one vision of how these things should work. So you should go and learn something rogue. Go learn something like ggplot. I know it's a really random choice, but working with something else like that will also teach you to appreciate some of the things that are super easy in these tools and what's hard elsewhere. And it also means that you can go for these kind of very unique roles where people are looking for very specific things. And so just learning one tool to me is not enough. I've actually said this in a video I did talking about the best ways to learn Tableau. I actually call out the fact that, look, just learning Tableau is not going to be enough. You're going to have to learn more things. So couldn't agree more. Learn multiple tools. You could start off with one of these most commonly sort of selected tools, but I think it's also important to diversify and learn something different.
Power BI is part of the Microsoft stack, so it works smoothly with Excel and SharePoint. Besides that, it has a free version, and even the paid versions are relatively budget friendly compared to the other BI tools. Next up is Tableau. Tableau is a BI tool with more extensive data visualization capabilities than Power BI. It seems to be just a bit more in demand in the job market than Power BI. It comes with a much higher price tag though, making it harder to learn if you're starting out by yourself. And then there's...
I don't agree with that. And I know for a fact that Stefanovic knows this, but there's a product called Tableau Public. That is a free version. It's got all the same capabilities of Tableau Desktop. I've actually already done a video on this on my channel. Go check it out. The other thing is, And now we're treading into Power BI versus Tableau territory. But if you look at the sticker price of a product and think that that's the only cost related to deploying that software, you'll quickly learn, at least as an analytics consultant, that that is the wrong approach, because these technologies have other costs. And a concept you always have to sort of think about is something called the total cost of ownership. And that value is different in every organization. It's not just enough to look at the sticker price. So yes, Tableau might look more expensive per user and the pricing might be set up differently, but you've also got to understand that Microsoft includes Power BI as part of wider enterprise deals. And so if you think about sort of Excel and Power BI and Microsoft is pretty much on every enterprise laptop. So it's much easier for Microsoft to sort of bundle in Power BI with some other piece of software. And that's what I think makes it cheaper, because in essence, it's easier for Microsoft to throw in Power BI and a bunch of other features for free to help lock you into their platform, specifically Microsoft Azure. So be aware of that, because Tableau doesn't have any of those sort of other big cloud platforms. It's been acquired by Salesforce, but Salesforce doesn't have a cloud offering that's equally as competitive. But if you're working in the CRM world and you use Salesforce as your CRM, Tableau might start to be a bit more competitive versus Power BI. But I never like to go into cost comparisons, because I don't think I know enough from a sales perspective to know what the cost of ownership is for different organizations. And also you've got to be aware that Tableau changes the price depending on your scale. So whilst you see the prices on the website, that's never really the real price when you go to enterprise level. The real price, it tends to be sort of bundled with a bunch of other things, not including Tableau Desktop as well, a bunch of other sort of capabilities. But from an individual perspective, if you want to learn Tableau, use Tableau Public. You can use that straight away from free in the browser, download it to your desktop, and it works pretty much the same way as a full desktop experience. The only thing you can't connect to is databases. That is the only catch, but you can connect to flat files, which means if you're just learning, you can go to Kaggle, download a dataset, work with it. You can go to Microsoft Excel, download a dataset, work with it. If you've got data in Google Sheets, go to Google Sheets, download that data, or connect to it directly from Tableau Public. That also works. It's pretty flexible. And you can take part in all the sort of learning activities that are available in the community as well. So just a word of caution there when people talk about prices. I don't know enough about prices, and I like to think I know Tableau very well, and I don't feel comfortable talking about it. So something to watch out for.
ClickView, using in-memory technology, making it a super fast and responsive way of doing business intelligence, but also a pretty high price tag, and also it's less in demand than Tableau and Power BI. I personally pick.
That's interesting. The in-memory thing, all the tools work in memory. I'm not sure why you called it out specifically. Tableau has an in-memory technology called Hyper. I'm sure Power BI has the same sort of technology. The reason that's important is because the in-memory capability is what allows these pieces of software to pull up and load data really quickly. It loads the data into memory rather than having to read it from the raw file every single time.
Pick Power BI as my BI tool. Although it might not be the fastest BI tool out there or the one with the most extensive capabilities, in my opinion, it can give you the most bang for buck when it comes to becoming a full-time data analyst.
Really interesting. The most bang for buck. What does that mean? I've seen people build incredible Tableau Public visualizations and land jobs almost instantly as well. So because I've never used Power BI, and maybe I should do one time, but I've never used Power BI, so I can't speak to that. I'd love to know what your thoughts are as a data analyst. If you've learned both of them, which one of the assets you've created in either software actually kind of has the most appeal when you put it in your portfolio or your CV? That would be a really sort of interesting question to know, or answer to know to that question.
Before we move on to how to actually get good at data analysis and land that first job, there's one more thing we need to do as a data analyst. After you've mastered a BI tool, it's time to get into the more advanced analytics. I'm talking about which programming language to use when it comes to data analysis or data science. Software developers and programmers get to choose between Java, JavaScript, Ruby, C#, Python, R, C, C++, and many more. Luckily for us data analysts, we only have to choose between two programming languages, R and Python. So which one should you pick? I chose Python, but if I could go back in time, I would choose Python. Why? Well, even though they're actually very similar, R is a programming language focus more on statistical analysis, while Python is a more general purpose programming language that also happens to be very good for data analysis. And although R might be a little bit easier to learn, I would still go for Python as it's probably the #1 programming language in the world. Meaning, if you get good at Python for data analysis, it might also open the door to a lot of different job opportunities. So,
that's an interesting take. I was waiting to see where you went with it, because I think if you learn SQL, as you suggested, if you learn a visualization tool, as you suggested, and you'd learn Excel, and then you'd learn 2 other tools, you're already pretty much good to go. I think in most enterprise contexts, you don't need R and Python. R and Python tends to be reserved for specifically data science roles, and this is a data analyst role. So data science roles require R and Python by default. But as a data analyst, at an entry-level data analyst, I don't think you need R and Python out of the gate. It doesn't hurt to learn it, and it doesn't hurt to be aware of what it can do, and it doesn't hurt to spend, let's say, a weekend on that Udemy course I said you probably won't finish. Just spending 4 hours going through a Udemy course, building something, putting it on GitHub so you can show people that you've actually at least dabbled with it. But do you need to be sitting there writing R and Python scripts to solve data problems out of the gate? I'm not convinced. Might you need to do that in the future for your career progression? I think so, especially if you want to become a data scientist or go down that route. So, take it or leave it, but I'm not convinced you need R and Python.
Path I took is Excel, SQL, Power BI, and Python. This is the path
that's really interesting. So, and this is actually what the most watched segment in this video, right? So, I'm not sure.
So the path I took is Excel, SQL, Power BI, and Python.
Right. So let me give you like an honest view on these skills, right? So I'm a Tableau visionary. I've worked with Tableau for over 7 years. So if I replace Power BI with Tableau, if you ask me, do I have Python skills? No. Do I have SQL skills? Yes. I have okay SQL skills. They're not an S tier level SQL skills, but I can open up a SQL prompt, write some SQL, do some basic stuff. But the majority of my time is spent in Tableau. And also I use other tools, ETL tools like Alteryx, Tableau Prep, all those tools that some companies prefer over SQL. That's something important to understand. We'll come back to that maybe later. And then of course, Excel, just basic Excel. So I'm not an Excel ninja. I'm not writing VBA scripts, but I know my way around an Excel file. So that's sort of my place. And I've been working in the industry now for over 8 years. I've worked as a consultant in a consultancy. I've worked at places like Accenture, worked out in the field, leading teams. I haven't needed to push on, let's say, SQL and Python to do that piece of work. Tableau has been the piece of software that has got me places into sort of roles. And in this case, that would be Power BI in Stefanovic's sort of braille. So there's the skew here is that whatever tool presents the data tends to have sort of the biggest airtime in most sort of job applications. But when you actually get down to the work, you need data prep skills, and you could be using SQL or Python, but I think more companies are preferring tools that are a little bit easy to understand with a lower sort of adoption hurdle, and those tend to be visual tools, visual ETL tools to help you clean data. I'm even aware of data warehouse teams who've moved entire data warehouses without having to write SQL because they're using IDEs or instances that sort of allow them to do those transformations without having to write SQL. So just be aware that although this is his path, go off the beaten path. You can make your own path and do it differently, and hopefully make a YouTube channel and talk about it. Let's carry on.
This is the path I would recommend, as it worked out great for me. But you can start off with any language or tool that suits you best, because whatever you pick, your first language or tool will definitely not be your last. Right. So now that you know which tools to learn, let's talk about how to actually learn it. And this is where beginners make their first major mistake. The mistake most beginners make is that they try to learn by watching others. This is how most people learn data analysis. Some people go to Udemy and watch multiple 20+ hour courses and probably not even finish all of them. Or they watch YouTube videos watching other people analyze data. But without actually writing code or analyzing data themselves, they give themselves a false sense of progress. Because
fantastic point. Amen. Amen to this. I was wondering where he was going with this, because I was about to say, no, absolutely, you should watch people and learn from those techniques. But you'll notice that I don't make videos where I go through sort of building dashboards, and I don't make videos where I go through trying to build solutions. Instead, I make videos on features and show you how to use them, because I very much agree with this sort of way of thinking. You need to get hands-on with the data yourself, right? You need to actually have a problem you want to solve and actually go through the process of doing it. Because only when you do it do you hit the hurdles and make the mistakes that lead you to learn. When you're watching something like a Udemy course, or let's say a really well-curated YouTube video, the problem is those examples are set up to allow the format to work. Let's say take Udemy. Like you wouldn't want to watch a 30-minute Udemy video of someone troubleshooting something. It's not very engaging. You'd never make it through. You wouldn't finish the video. You wouldn't want to watch a 15-minute video of someone troubleshooting a problem inside of Power BI. Again, you just want to know what's the best way of doing it. But it's actually only by watching those troubleshooting methods and actually learning those methods do you become a better person. And you're not going to watch those videos because they don't exist. They just don't perform well. People want answers to these questions rather than understanding where the questions come from. So go ahead and actually get stuck in with the data. I couldn't agree with this more. It's absolutely fantastic advice. I can't tell you how many people watch something, they said they've watched something or read something, and then you ask them sort of a follow-on question from that, and they've never thought of it because they've just not engaged with the content at a sort of a thought level. So really important.
Because analyzing data in your head is very different from actually doing it.
Yeah.
Why did I do this? Data analysis in your head is very different from actually analyzing data, stumbling upon faulty data, and debugging for hours. So what is the right way to do it? The answer is very simple. Learn by doing. You just need to get the reps in and start coding and analyzing data by yourself.
And no one wants to hear this. And I feel like this is where kind of, the title and the message are kind of a little bit disconnected. Here's the fastest way to become a data analyst to actually get a job. By the way, it involves a ton of work. You just need to spend time. It's true. You're not going to get good unless you spend time doing it. Some of the most talented people in the Tableau world have just simply spent time working on skills, building. And you can see their progression through their Tableau public profiles. You can see their progression through the way they approach work. And you only get that by getting paper cuts along the way on the journey and then learning from those mistakes. So if you can find places and resources that gives you challenges, absolutely go and get stuck in. I think that's what he's about to cover here. In the Tableau world, we have lots of different sort of community projects that allow you to hop into challenges every single week. I'll put a link to them on screen, and I'll put maybe an overlay right now so you can see where that is on the Tableau website. But nonetheless, couldn't agree with this more. It's so important.
I would recommend a website called excelpracticeonline.com, a free website where you learn to use Excel by doing, from the basics to the most advanced functionalities. For SQL, I would recommend the website w3schools.com/SQL. For Power BI, I would recommend DataCamp. There's free courses and also paid ones. For Python, you can go to this free website called learnpython.org. Whether you're practicing every day at your current job so you can make that switch to a data analysis career, or whether you're still studying, you need to practice every single day. Only this way will you experience what it's actually like working as a data analyst.
It's really good, and he's covered a couple of free resources there. I'm trying to think, what's a free Tableau learning equivalent? It's got to be Tableau Public. And I think it's a combination of Tableau Public and the weekly challenges. Tableau has like has some resources that you can get stuck in with. But what is interesting, maybe someone should make like a curated list of almost like challenges that you can go through in a specific order that teach you skills in a certain way, just by repurposing the content that's already out there. Maybe that's an interesting idea. Maybe we should try that.
Analysis, working as a data analyst. Only then will you learn what it's like to debug your own code or formulas. Because, to be honest, that's what you will spend the most time on. Debugging faulty code or correcting faulty data. Being a data analyst is awesome. But this is also the second major mistake most beginners make. They try to solve every problem themselves. The fact is, that error you just got in Power BI, there's a very big chance someone already has experienced exactly the same error as you. And that's good news for you, because now you don't have to look for the cause of the error. You just have to copy part of the error message in Google, and you probably end up on some Stack Overflow site where someone explains exactly how to solve this error. Well, let's be honest, copying code from Stack Overflow is like 80% of any developer, programmer, or data analyst job. Data analyst is awesome. Okay, now that you know what tool...
It's just funny. This drives me nuts. The amount of times I will get a question on a video or a question from someone in the community, and their question is so precise that I'm able to take that question, put it into Google, literally hit enter, and the first link is the solution to said question, right? It drives me nuts, but people don't do it enough. And here's another thing. Unless you do this often, Google won't actually get good at helping you when you get stuck. So I've actually seen instances where when I Google for things that I'm looking for come up more often, and the same resources don't come up for other people Googling the same thing. Why? Because I've used Google so much that it's just learned sort of the subject and domain and the kind of things I'm looking for, that it nearly always pulls up the right answer in the first 2 or 3 hits. And unless you do the same thing and start teaching Google, hey, I like to search about data analyst things, about these particular technologies and these particular solutions, you won't teach Google what you're kind of really looking for. And Google does have some sort of mental model for each and every one of us over time. And in order to sort of build that up, you got to start using it alongside your skills. So I nearly always work in a sort of dual screen setup. If I don't have that, I have a tablet or a phone. I'll just quickly Google something on my phone and go out and try and sort of the answer in Tableau itself. Now, the other thing I'll say is that, like in this particular case, he's copying solutions from Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow and Tableau isn't quite as common, but there is something called the Tableau Community Forums. With that, what I always say is sometimes people don't ask good questions, or they ask a good question, but it's really hard to replicate the problem unless you give people a sample data set or solution. So I always recommend go to Mockaroo, build a mock data set that allows someone else to try and solve the problem. Because if you do that, A, you engage more people. They actually want to try and come and help you. And second, it teaches you to better articulate what you actually need help with. That's another key thing that people don't often understand. Asking good questions leads to better answers. Ask bad questions, no one will answer you. And number 2, when you do get an answer, it will probably not be the solution. So learning how to ask good questions is also just as important.
And programming language to pick and how to actually learn it, it's time to build your portfolio.
Yeah.
And this will help you build out an attractive CV for recruiters on LinkedIn. Recruiters, I always talk a little bit like this. I'm a programmer.
So I'll use that sort of little comedic moment to stop and say this. Not enough people think about building their portfolio as they're building up work. I almost think like everything you do, you got to think of some way of adding it to your portfolio. And you might think, I can't add everything to my portfolio. And you're correct. But the thing is, it's only as you add things, do you then start to get a sense of prioritization of what's valuable and what's not? Because as you're doing things, as you're achieving things, you have a sense of sort of achievement firstly, but also you'll start to realize, look, these are the solutions that really sort of created huge impact. And these are the solutions that, actually maybe didn't, and I thought they did. The other thing is it also teaches you to better articulate the impact and value you present to any organization. And in many ways, that is also a sort of another skill you have to learn, because building all these things in Excel, Power BI, Tableau, to you, they're almost like levels in a game. And as you achieve those levels, you clear the levels, you beat the boss, great. But in business context, actually describing the value those things generate is actually quite hard. So if you start sort of doing this almost reflective approach of every time you do something, save it somewhere, put it in like a note, and then you understand over time the kind of things and kind of problems you're solving, you can build a high level picture. And it's the high level picture that's actually super valuable. For example, I could build lots of visualizations for fast moving consumer goods companies. Fast moving consumer goods is essentially just, people that make biscuits and chocolates and that kind of stuff, crisps, things that, you buy in a supermarket. Now I can build lots of data visualizations in that space. But as you start to work on more of them, you tend to realize that they generally fall around certain high level topics. For example, promotional spend, trade spend, optimizing promotions. These are the high level terms that people in specific sectors are actually looking for. And those are what you should be using when you talk about your skills and your portfolio. So here's a data visualization, having the same sort of moment. Here's a data visualization. It talks about promotions. I use it to help improve the trade spend for a particular organization. Okay, that's when you're starting to really connect the business sort of area and the data visualization, the actual work you're doing. No one's really interested in the end product. They're interested in the impact it has in businesses and in real work. And it's actually, if you're good at articulating that, you'll find it very easy to talk to recruiters and extremely easy to talk about your accomplishments when you're getting recruited or hired.
Programming language and recruiters talk to me every day. Now, if you have a job where you can apply data analytics already, then do so right away. If you don't really do anything data analytics related, like sales for example, then try to build a report or a dashboard showing some key metrics or KPIs that you can show to your manager. He will appreciate it and you will get to learn your data analysis skills. And if you can
And you can go broader than this. You don't have to just do something work related. You can also go find public data on Kaggle or wherever you find your data sets. There's just tons of places to find data sets these days. Take a political issue today, take a global issue today like climate change, take any of these issues, take these data sets and tell a story, put them in your portfolio. People don't really care about the topics. They care about seeing your skills. And it's only by trying different data sets and different skills do you actually come across challenges that come across when you're just working with data sets. I've sometimes connected to data sets and found there's very little to tell. And I've actually realized, no, there's a plenty of stories to tell. I'm just not seasoned enough at working with this kind of data to tell stories. And so by doing lots of different challenges, you'll actually learn a lot more about how to tell stories with data. In fact, there's a really good book called Storytelling with Data. I'll put an image of it and link to it here in the screen. It's super valuable. I think you should almost definitely read this. In fact, Luke Baruch has done a video on this already, summarizing the book. So go ahead and check it out. Just buy the book. It's just, you just have to have it on your shelf. I have it somewhere. My books aren't on my shelf behind me, but just go get the book. It will teach you so much about data storytelling and analytics and being an analyst in general.
Can't apply to your current job, or if you're still studying, then start a project on your own at home, because in the end it's about getting that data analyst job. And the best way to do that is as follows. Pimp up your LinkedIn profile. I've made a video before where I gave my top 5 LinkedIn profile tips to attract recruiters on LinkedIn, and I'll summarize it here for you. Make sure you put data analyst in as many places as you can in your profile. LinkedIn is a search engine, and if recruiters search for data analyst, you want to be found. You want to be on top of that list. So make sure your header contains the word
if you're looking to get hired, pimp up your
profile.
profile. It's just very straightforward.
Put in the keyword data analyst. Once your LinkedIn profile is set up, there's 2 things you can do. Start applying to every single data analyst job you can find on LinkedIn or any other job platform. Or the second way, which I prefer, is if you've set up your LinkedIn profile correctly, then recruiters will soon start hunting you. They will invite you to job interviews for data analyst positions. Which brings me to major mistake number 3.
Don't quit. Well, do quit. Let me explain. You see, the second best decision I have ever made in my life was becoming a data analyst. And to become one yourself, the only thing you have to do is don't quit. Whether it will take you 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year, if you keep applying, if you keep improving your skills, updating your CV, you will land that job eventually. And trust.
And this is such an important concept. In gaming, there's this idea called the grind. Essentially, when you're playing a game, they build in mechanics that just make you spend time in the game. You don't really enjoy doing them, but you have to go and do them to maybe gather resources, upgrade something. And that's typically known as the grind. Now, it doesn't sound pretty and nice, but when you're working as a data analyst, there is an element of this. You do have to sort of grind through challenges and work through things to gain experience. And it just takes time. And some people almost quit a little bit early because I think we come from a world where you're fed answers very easily and very quickly. And so people just expect to be told what hoops they need to jump to kind of get to the end result. And the reality is that if you jump the same hoops as someone else, well, how does that differentiate you? It doesn't. So you've got to go out and find your own challenges, tell your own story, and build up your own sort of combination of skills that are unique to you that you can use to sort of tell a story better than anyone else. And that takes time. If you think about it, 1.5 million people watch this video. So if they all go and do what Stefanovic has done, even if only 2% of them actually are successful, that's still thousands of people that are going to have the same level of skill sets as you. So how do you differentiate yourself from those people? Well, you got to do a little bit more and you got to keep going. And it's exactly what he's saying here. Don't quit, keep going. Many of you people don't make it to the end, but even if you make it to the end, you've still got to keep going and try and diversify yourself in some way or form, because there's just so much demand for people, and the specific thing that people are looking for, whether it's skill set, a particular tool, particular capability, is actually soft skills. And soft skills isn't something that he's touched on in this video, but it's actually super, super important. I'll come to it very, very soon. Let's carry on.
Trust me, once you do land that first data analyst job, a world of opportunities will open up for you. You can grow your skills into a senior data analyst or become a freelance data analyst. Or what I eventually did, quit my job as a data analyst. The single best decision in my life was quitting my job as a data analyst.
There is some sort of beautiful thing to this. Someone became a data analyst in 3 years, made a video about it. It got 1.5 million views, and he actually doesn't work as a data analyst anymore. Wonderful irony.
You see, becoming a freelance data analyst gave me the resources to quit my job and pursue a completely different career, creating my own brand while traveling the world. Do not subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm 100% serious. If you're looking for advice and tips on how to become a data analyst and how to build a data analyst career for the rest of your life, then I would recommend subscribing to Luke Barousse.
What up, then, nerds?
As he makes way better videos than me. But if you view being a data analyst as a stepping stone to creating a life you want, your dream life, whatever that might be for you, then you might want to subscribe, as I share my personal lessons on this journey from a 9-to-5 to a dream life. Watch this video next to learn what made me quit my 6-figure job to start YouTube. Cheers.
So that ending was pretty much almost what I see as a YouTuber. I can kind of see what he's doing. He's pivoting his YouTube channel away from being data analyst content. That's kind of what enabled him to go and do what he's actually wants to do and enjoy. If I go back to his channel and let's just see his videos, they see 100%. Yeah, you can see that he's pivoted from, let's see, when was this data analyst video? So 170,000, I lied. 9 months ago. This video was 6 months ago. So where is that video? So here you go. So fastest way to become a data analyst and actually get a job. That to me was the video where he pivoted and he's sort of pointing people towards Luke. All the videos after that are more about sort of professional lifestyle. He's kind of changing the channel and he's taking his audience with him, because again, a lot of them will have that same aspiration. You want to become a data analyst to enable some sort of other ambition or desire, and you're seeing it as a quick way of doing that. So, you know, hats off to Stefanovic. He kind of cleared the bus at the end of this level and he's off to do his thing. Yeah, definitely subscribe to Stefanovic if you want to go back and watch some of his older data analyst content. It's sort of interesting because even if he does go off and do something else, I guarantee you he'll be using his data analysis skills to improve his capabilities and improve where he ends up. So once you're a data analyst, you're always a data analyst. One thing I didn't see in this video is what I would call a focus on skills, soft skills in particular. You see, Stefanovic strikes me as someone who probably has a lot of soft skills, and it's hard to realize that because you've not seen him work in the settings he's working. He's also got enough soft skills to be going out and working for himself. He's built a brand. He's obviously got a great YouTube channel, which means he's a good communicator, whether he thinks that or not. And there's also a bunch of other things that, you know, there's so many things that make an individual. And some of them, what you see on YouTube is only but a fraction of what's actually going on. And so what I encourage you to do is follow lots of other data analysts, talk to people, talk to them about their experiences and try and understand what soft skills have they built to kind of enable them to look at these challenges and almost brush them aside as they sort of go on and learn. It's a really, really vital thing. Maybe I'll do a video about what are the sort of top soft skills I think you should go with any particular data analyst role. I've already got a video that talks about how to learn Tableau, and it does cover soft skills as part of that. And I go into a little bit of detail about business domain information as well. So go and check that out. But as ever, that's pretty much it from me. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little breakdown, and I'll catch you in the next one.